And welcome to Harry Cole Saves the West, the show American grit meets British backbone. We are still in London for our New Year's shows, and joining me today, Scarlett Maguire of Merlin Strategy and Editor-in-Chief of CityAM, Christian May. Happy New Year to you both. Friends of the show, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Not at all. Big year, both in America and in Britain, in terms of midterms, official midterms in the US. The House is up for grabs, some of the Senate's up for grabs. Donald Trump's first big test case since his Lazarus-like return to the White House last year. In the UK as well, Keir Starmer, the most unpopular Prime Minister in British politics since they invented polling, which is it's something, isn't it? Also facing big tests. Scarlett, very quickly, simply, how's it going to go for Trump and how's it going to go for Starmer?
Great. So I think, let's start with Starmer. I think it's going to be a rough May. So he's facing attacks on all fronts. So he's going to come under fire from the Greens, from the Lib Dems, from independent candidates, and from Reform as well, obviously. And we're going to see these elections all over the country. So in parts of the country where, for example, Labour have never lost control of some of these councils, in parts of the North East, which are seen to be traditional Labour strongholds. We're also going to see elections in Wales, in Scotland, for the control of those devolved nations. And crucially, I think, for Labour, and increasingly difficult, and something that's going to be increasingly difficult for them, is the challenge they face in London from parties on their left, also in cities like Birmingham from independent candidates. So it's going to be everywhere, everything, and it's going to be quite a dramatic and I would say quite a bad night for Keir Starmer.
Traditionally people say Reform can't win in Scotland, they've got no base there. Obviously, all eyes are going to be in Wales, where Reform are doing pretty well in the polls. We saw in recent by-elections that there's been sort of tactical voting to sort of squeeze out Reform between Plaid Cymru and Labour. Will we see something similar in Scotland as well? Well, we're not expecting you could imagine a Reform First Minister in Wales at a push. We're not expecting that in Scotland.
No, we're not expecting that in Scotland. I would be really shocked if we woke up to find that there was then a Reform First Minister in Scotland. But what we might see is then be the second party, and even that is completely unprecedented for Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage's previous outfits, and indeed even Reform in the 2024 Scottish general election in Scotland, did nowhere near as well as they're currently polling, which is hitting around 20% in quite a lot of the national polls. Completely unprecedented for a party led by Nigel Farage, but it's clearly tapping into something in Scotland.
Something's happening out there. But what's happening? What is the difference really between the sort of central belt of Scotland and the more traditional deindustrialised north of England? Not a huge amount, apart from a made-up border along the line.
Completely, and they share a lot of the same concerns. And we do know, Scottish voters, and actually, voters in England and Wales and Northern Ireland as well, are hugely fed up with the status quo and looking for an opportunity to vote against it. And Reform offers certain sorts of voters that opportunity.
Let's stick on the UK. Talking of rough Mays, Christian May.
Wow.
Aren't you glad you came?
Yeah.
Look, I mean, Keir Starmer's saying this week, Britain's turning a corner, we're turning a corner. Two very rough budgets, combined tax rate of, 60 billion, 70 billion, I think it was, over the course of this Parliament now. If Labour Party are relying on the UK economy picking up in the next 5 months, they're onto hiding from nothing, right?
Yeah, what we've heard a lot from Starmer and his team at the start of this year is that this is the year where Brits are going to start to feel it, which they've somehow managed to make sound like a threat more than a promise of economic uplands.
We'll enjoy the shining city on the sky, damn it.
You are going to feel it. I mean, we are already still feeling, it should be said, as you put it, the £60 billion worth of increased taxes from the first budget. Don't forget, many of the tax tweaks and hikes from the second budget aren't coming into effect yet. A lot of them are actually pushed so far away towards the next election that I'd be amazed if they stick with them. But assuming that they do, it's going to lead to a situation that we've become quite used to in this country, where basically our living standards stagnate, if not decline. The state of our economy is such that the extent to which we are standing still, we've just got used to it. It's really quite a tragic national condition. The discrepancy between GDP per capita growth rate in the UK and the US is nothing short of a national scandal.
Scandinavian levels of taxation for third world levels of public service.
Starmer said in an op-ed over the weekend in one of your sister publications, I think it was, that the people are going to start to feel better off. Well, you might if you are claiming benefits. and you probably will if you're a pensioner. But outside of those two demographics, I don't see it. The tax rate in this country is astronomically high, and now it's such that they're just tweaking and tightening every nut and bolt that they can on the body of our economy. Brits are not stupid. They feel poor. They are poorer in almost every measure than they were a few years ago, and I'm afraid that is a long-term trajectory, and they will be, on average, if you're earning 50 grand, the net result of all of this is that by the end of this parliament, you'll be worse off.
There's a bit of a counterculture suggestion, though, that the British economy actually isn't in as bad a state as people are saying, and actually there are signs that things could actually get better, and actually, by the end of this year, inflation will be back at 2%, and there are things, not to get too gloomy about, and energy prices crucially, because the Saudis are going hell for leather in production of oil. The Americans have just seized production of Venezuela, or are about to. The oil prices are going to stay low. That is going to trickle down eventually to consumers, right?
Well, look, I try quite hard to look on the bright side.
Looking on the scanning the horizon.
My media organisation is meant to be an optimistic voice, and so look, I am quite alive to the fact that we're not a basket case economy.
We're not
a basket case.
I mean, that's when you have to say we're not a basket case. That's not great.
My point is that there are some people who say, look around you, we've never had it so good, and on some measures that sort of Panglossian take of things, I suppose there's a point there. My point is that it shouldn't be this bad, and indeed it could be so much better. So we have just been treading water. We're doomed to do so for years down the line. You mentioned inflation. There's sort of four things to look out for over the coming year: interest rates, inflation, unemployment rate, and GDP growth. So interest rates look like they're on a downward trajectory because inflation is finally on a downward trajectory, and it's taken us longer to get there than other countries. The government, I would urge them to be cautious of the extent to which they continuously claim credit for interest rate cuts, because if you actually read what the Bank of England says when it announces these most recent reductions in interest rates, they're doing it because the economy is in a terrible state.
So
and because inflation is easing, they're trying to increase demand by that measure. Unemployment is going to rise. It's been rising. It's risen every single month since the Labour government came into power. It's continuing to rise. And GDP growth is anaemic. And as a per capita measure, it's pathetic.
Well, especially with the amount of people arriving every month, the per capita goes down. Scarlett, how much does this really matter? Is the economy stupid, as we're told every time? But actually, where is the economy at the moment in terms of people's... we talk about the cost of living, but then the state of the economy, but then we've got immigration, the state of the NHS. Where is the economy at the forefront of voters' minds at the moment?
I think it is the most important issue.
Always
when
is,
they say the
never
economy,
isn't.
Not quite always. I think we can see, that you can see special circumstances like, for example, the pandemic, where health was by far and away the most important issue. And we have seen over the last year or so immigration jostle for first place. And immigration is an interesting one as well, because a lot of the time, especially with voters on the right of the spectrum, they see immigration as the root of problems with other things they're unhappy about as well. So, for example, public services or even the economy, they sort of see it as the root cause. So all of these things can be more interconnected and more complicated in voters' minds than I think a lot of opinion polls necessarily pick up. But no, it's the economy, and crucially, it's not macro things. I think everything that Christian was talking about is obviously incredibly important. It's just not how voters think about it. They have sort of a very much it's their own personal finances that matter.
Yeah.
And we'll
my rent, my bills,
exactly.
my
We'll come
kids.
on to this because politicians in every country, in the US, in the UK, everywhere, they fall foul of this idea that they're going to start benefiting when inflation starts falling. Because voters, when they say they want inflation to fall, they never mean they actually want inflation to fall.
They want the prices to go back to what the prices were
exactly
5 years ago.
Yes, which is a much harder job to pull off.
Well, impossible. It never does.
Yes, exactly.
Well, it's not good when it does. If you're in a deflationary environment, it can lead to all sorts of pain. What we're mostly in is a stagflationary environment, where we have inflation which is sticky and persistent.
Yeah.
And bear in mind, of course, the Bank of England targeted 2% rate, but if it's at 2%, it still means the prices are increasing by 2%.
And slower, hopefully, than wages. And
a stagnant economy with sticky inflation is sort of where we are.